Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
I truly believe we're all going through something, some kind of stuff, whatever it might be, and it changes, could change along the way. Stress, anxiety, trying to figure out life. And for that, there's therapy, there's counseling. We're going to look at it in a different light today. Creative arts therapy. Very unique, very impactful, especially even for children. And this is something that's she's specializing in. And we've got her back here. Deniz Oktay is on the program, who is a psychotherapist, correct?
Yes, correct.
So when I think of creative arts therapy, I'm thinking of expression to let out what's inside of you. Am I right territory with that?
Absolutely. The creative arts therapies are a great way to support people working through emotional, emotional, any kind of emotions using art and as a vehicle, as a way to lead to self-expression, which then can lead to a lot of insight. It can lead, using metaphor sometimes can help see a problem in a different kind of way. And it also can lead to play. So it can be, using actual visual arts, drawing, coloring, that kind of thing, painting, making things with clay. My expertise is in dance movement therapy. So I'm really focused on the body and using elements of dance in terms of like effort and timing to start to bring play into the emotional expression.
Do you find when you first start working with somebody that's older, not a kid, although that could be the same, that they're self-conscious about expressing themselves? They have to get over that part.
Yeah, I mean, everyone sort of hesitation to just jump up, especially when it's dealing with personal material that's maybe upsetting or distressing in some way. To bring play to that can be really helpful in healing, but to get to that place can feel a bit intimidating. So for sure. Yeah.
How does that come out of the person? So you encourage them to express themselves. So let's say it's dance. How do they connect with what they're going through and release it through some kind of dance?
I can give you an example.
Sure.
Just this week, I was working with someone who was processing through an issue at work, right? So maybe we have a colleague or a boss that we're struggling with, or we have a colleague we're struggling with, and then we struggle to figure out how to tell the boss, right? So kind of like checking in, processing through this, the narrative, what's the experience. Then when we go into movement, the first thing that's important is just to stand up, breathe, get into the body, warm the body up, literally warm the muscles and tissues up, start to increase your range of motion, start to feel your circulation. And then from there, what we did in this particular situation was started to play with different different ways of engaging. There's something called Laban notation, which is a form of documenting dance choreography. So there's different efforts, right? So let's play with strength in the body, what it feels like to feel strong. Let's play now with really direct movement, being really direct and putting all your energy into one movement. Now let's play with the opposite. Let's play with light movement, like feeling like a cloud, feeling floaty. So we kind of played with all these different efforts. And they were able to kind of describe what strong, slow, direct movement felt really good. So as they were moving in the space, I then entered as the boss or as the person that they need to have the conversation with. And what happens to that feeling of strong in the body, right? All of a sudden wasn't so strong, really hard to be direct, wanted to be more indirect. So then that led to like a deepening of the conversation. Where do we go from here? And then some improv and play around that. And then they were able to really like take away kind of like, okay, this is how I'm going to come into the meeting with this kind of energy, right? So it just kind of helped process through knowing themselves better, what they feel really comfortable with, but then what happens in relationship to someone who maybe there's an authority piece there or an intimidation. So, or that there's some sort of conflict, right? Kind of like helping. Hopefully that helps
Yeah, no,
a
totally.
bit. Yeah.
And I want to know, is the process similar? If you're working with somebody, would you say, hey, show me what it looks to be strong, show me what it looks to be vulnerable, and then they have to uh, translate that to some type of movement or dance movement?
Yeah, I think the language show me, I wouldn't really use that only because I don't want anyone to feel like they're performing for me. And when the minute you go into the arts and especially dance, it can feel very performative, right? So I
Yes.
want to really try to keep it as genuine, but what does it feel like in your body to be strong? What does it feel like in your body to feel floaty and light? And everyone's different. Some people love being like all over the place and kind of just like light and airy. And some people really want to feel that like strength in their body. So it just helps. And it's like kind of inviting someone into the process. And this was just one example. There's
Sure.
so many examples that, it just sort of comes out of the relationship that I have with who I'm working with, their comfortability, right? How long have we been working together? Do they trust me with me introducing a directive? Sometimes maybe we just start in the chair and kind of like, what images are coming up for you? What sensations are coming up? Where in the body do you feel this as we're talking about something that's causing you a lot of distress? It's happening in the chest. Okay, let's go into what is that tension in the
Hmm.
chest? Does it have a size, a shape, a color, right? And then kind of like just keep going, keep going, keep getting interested, curious, exploring, and asking
Hmm.
questions. Yeah.
See, for me, I would need to be led. Now, I'm not
Uh-huh.
just going to just express, like need to get into the zone. Um, what comes up typically? Realization, aha moments. Does that happen when somebody's expressing themselves in the process that we're talking about?
Oh yeah, for metaphor, using symbolism, sometimes even just using color, shape, it can help us see and define the situation in a different kind of way, right? It can help us get a little distance from it and a little bit of play, right? So for example, like bringing in maybe like what animal do you feel like? That might be a directive. You are home with your family, what animal do you feel like, right? Now, when you're home out with your friends, what animal comes out there, right? And like, how do these different roles and relationships, how do they shift?
Wow.
And all of a sudden it's like, oh, I feel really small at home with my family, like a mouse, and I feel like a, you know, leopard when I'm with my friends. So just kind of like it can highlight and help someone then be like, oh, let me talk about this in this way, right?
Remember when I want to say, I don't know, 10 years ago, 8 years ago, something like that. Uh Spirit animals were big. People would compare themselves to animals.
Mhm. Yeah.
Kind of sounds, the same way in that area, the
Hmm.
comparison to an animal. How does this look between adults and children? Are children
Hmm.
easier to express themselves?
Sometimes, for
Yeah.
sure. I mean, I think children are just naturally less inhibited.
Mm,
They're more comfortable um, just expressing themselves and not worrying about what they look like.
sure.
And also, some kids really enjoy coming in and being asked, what do you want to do today? How do you want to move? Do you want to draw? Do you want to, put on some music and we'll dance? And they love having total control. right? It's like just kind of like this in jump on. Whereas adults sometimes we're kind of conditioned not to come in and just follow our lead. So maybe we need a little bit more structure and guidance along the way.
Mm.
But of course, everyone's different. Some kids need a little bit more uh, invitation, a little bit more action to kind of help them get into an expression. But also,
You bring back memories because I had some, challenges, separation anxiety and stuff. Yeah, when I was in elementary school, and I remember in an office, I guess it was a social worker, um, and I wound up drawing, and I could even tell you what I was drawing. I was drawing a guy parachuting. Still
oh,
remember it. I don't know what
uh-huh.
it meant. I was into, army men at the time, and I, thought it was cool. Um, but there was something that they defined based on my drawing that was a key to what I was thinking and going through at the time. I don't know the correlation, can't remember, but I was thinking as you're talking, you're bringing back a memory. And as a kid, I remember like they're making a big deal about my picture. I was just doodling, but apparently maybe it was the key to something at that time.
Hmm.
And I love to draw. That was my way of expression, but also my way of getting approval because I would hear, "Oh, that came out really good," or yeah, and I would be proud of it. But yeah, creative arts expression is so huge, and I think it's minimized. I don't believe that we as a society realize what comes out of that.
I completely agree. And actually, right now, just to share a little bit about the politics, there's a big, not a big fight, but an advocacy going on to get the bill passed for licensed creative arts therapists to be reimbursed or to be part of the insurance panels, because right now most of the insurance panels don't recognize the work that we're doing. But you're right. I mean, I think even what you're saying reminds me of the unconscious that can get unlocked when we
Yeah.
go into the arts, right? When we're thinking and we're talking, we sort of like can get stuck, but you go into an art process and all of a sudden it's like a little door, little
Hmm.
information to like what's there, kind of like what might come out in a dream,
Right.
right? You don't go to bed thinking about what you're going to dream. When you start to express, it's like, oh, here's something I'm just doodling, and all of a sudden it's like, oh,
Yeah.
that has a
Yeah.
lot of meaning, actually.
Exactly. It
Yeah.
just and it flows out of you easier than potentially somebody asking questions. How do you feeling? How did you feel at that time? How blah blah blah. Which I'm not. There's a place for that as well, but sometimes it's just there's less pressure when you're just doodling or expressing whatever it may be. I think I shared with you last time we got together, maybe the time before, um, looking at a dance studio, and I just thought it was about performing, people going there and putting on a performance. But it wasn't that. It was just what we're talking about to express certain things. And this particular studio was in Queens, New York. I know that you're in Brooklyn, right?
Hmm.
And it was focusing on this one program, women.
Hmm.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
just what we're talking about.
Yeah. There's a form of therapy that I do called authentic movement. And it's a form of movement therapy where you have a witness and a mover. And you can do this individually or in groups. The
Hmm.
movers are invited to close their eyes. There's no music. There's a specified time, say like half an hour, um, where the only information you ask is to follow your impulse in your body. And the witness has their eyes open and is witnessing from a very specific framework of being non-judgmental and really owning the experience as the witness. So not like analyzing, this isn't like I'm the authority here, but it's like I'm going to witness you moving to your natural impulses and I'm going to have my own experience and the mover has their experience and then we come back and we talk about it. And it's really amazing. It's
Hmm.
based on the work of
Wow.
Carl Jung, and the unconscious and the collective unconscious. But it's just absolutely beautiful what can come out of that process, because it's like learning how to see yourself and be seen in a really authentic way, right? Because so
Wow.
much about society, we learn how to diminish our impulses, be fit in all the ways in which like we need to be mindful of societal rights and wrongs. In this space, of course, you can't hurt anyone or hurt yourself. Guidelines to keep it safe.
Sure.
But other than that, it's a real opportunity to just move from a place of absolute individual impulse. And it's just amazing what can come out of that. So that kind of reminds me of that empty studio with the women in it, as you were
Yeah.
talking. Yeah.
Yeah. And potentially there was a witness. Now, the witness's function is to play back in words what was it, what was witnessed.
That's an interesting use of, yeah, it is to see the other, in as neutral and compassionate way. It's really an offering to see the mover in a way that and it is in a way an offering back, because it is, I see you, like, for example, I see you lifting your arm and reaching up to the sky. Maybe, there's a feeling that goes along with that. And I get a feeling of longing in myself as I see you doing this. Now, I, as a witness, may have a feeling of longing. The mover might have been like, that wasn't my feeling. But to be seen in that way, a lot of times there is a real resonance between the mover and witness. And it's so powerful. I can give I love using examples. I was in a group, actually. I was a mover. And I was moving. There maybe have been like 5 or 6 other people in the space. And I was really absolutely committed to my movement pattern. I was moving. I wanted to move alone. I didn't want anyone to move with me, and absolutely committed to that. Now, in real life, if someone wants to be with me or ask something of me, I often do it, whether I want to or not, because that's how I'm built. But in the movement space, the invitation was, I get to do whatever I want. I get to follow my impulse. I don't want to move with anyone. I want to move alone. All of a sudden, the mover comes along and tries to move with me. So I move away. They follow me. It's all with the eyes closed, and kind of like a fight almost in movement. I mean, it was safe, but it was playful. But I really stuck to what I wanted. I did not want to play. I did not want to be with another. And it was really intense. The witness came back as we were sharing and really saw my commitment to my choices and to my path. And that was a really profound moment. I don't think I'll ever forget it, because
Wow.
it was really being seen doing what I wanted in the way that I wanted, no matter what the other one did. That
So
then becomes transferable to life, right?
so do you feel that the witness was truly picking up on what you were putting out there?
Yes, I
Wow.
really felt like a profound sense of like, wow, someone really saw me like at my essence, and that was profound.
It's interesting how the transfer of energy, you guys in that example, lack of a better description, on the same page.
Uh-huh.
They were picking up what you were putting out. Others may not, they're interpreting. It's almost like Pictionary. You know what I'm saying? Where somebody acts out something and you have to figure out what they're doing. And this is loosely, I'm interpreting that in that way. But if they don't pick up on what you're putting out there, it's still okay. That doesn't have to be the goal. It just may be validation. And maybe you realize something that you didn't realize, that there was something else. You were doing something and you're not even 100% sure.
That's so true. So
Mm,
true. Yeah. A lot of times the witness can say something and it's like, no, that wasn't me. And then it's like, oh, well, wait a second. Actually, that
yeah.
does resonate quite a lot. Yeah.
Like I don't want to admit, but that was
Yeah.
what's going on. Uh, I
Yeah.
have to believe it's a little bit of a challenge getting over the speed bump of being able to freely express without knowing there's no judgment. You're not self-conscious or anything.
Oh yeah. And that's part of the process, actually. I think uh, sometimes initially and sometimes every time it's like, but kind of it's the whole experience. The whole time I had my eyes closed, all I could think about was that I did not want to be seen, or I was so worried that I was being judged, right? And then that can open up in a therapeutic space, like, okay, how does that apply to your life? Is that something that you experience a lot, in your day to day? And how does that show up for you in other parts of life, right?
Hmm.
And then we can start to talk about that. So sometimes it's just an invitation to a conversation that can deepen and bring awareness to something that sometimes we don't even know we're aware we're doing it, but it's impacting our life so much, right? That's why I love the creative arts therapies, because it's creativity. There's no one way to do it. It's like there's just so many different ways. There's a lot of structures and forms and frames that we can work within to try to help create the safety for the expression to come out. But there's, endless, limitless possibilities of how that shows up.
Where is it coming from? Is it coming out of your subconscious when you're expressing yourself?
A lot of times, I think it's it it can definitely be uh things that we don't like we've talked about before, the kind of ways we cut off the expression, right? Even the, sometimes it's really hard to acknowledge that we're angry or sad about something, right? Because that's kind of, not always welcome. Sometimes, we grow up in environments where it's like,
Yeah.
you got to just love everybody, be kind. We don't, your anger isn't really welcome here. So then what do we do with it? Like, it goes somewhere. So
Right.
it usually gets buried. And then when we start to go into a creative process, it's like, oh wow, I'm hot, thinking about this thing, or this is emerging. Why is my voice rising? Why am I getting so upset? Why am I crying? Why did this mean so much to me? And it's like, oh wow, I really felt angry
Yeah.
and I didn't even know it.
It's like the pot on the stove with the lid, and it just at some point it's gotta boil over. It's gotta come out.
Yes.
Hmm.
Yes. That's also that happens a lot, right? Where we are having arguments and don't realize that there's actually something unconsciously that we're holding that's kind of driving that. And once that gets addressed, oh, surprising, I'm
Right.
not arguing as much. I'm not as angry as much. So,
Thank you for bringing this all to light because I knew it was impactful, even hearing about that dance studio. However, I never realized so much is purged through creative arts and dancing and being one of those.
mhm.
We didn't even talk about some of the other things. We focus a little bit more on dance today, but um, wow, wow, interesting form of therapy.
Yeah, yeah. There's
Mhm.
art, music, poetry, so many different kinds of creative arts therapy.
How does somebody connect with you? They have a question. What's your website?
Williamsburg So I'm in Williamsburg, Brooklyn.
Gotcha. And I believe I asked you this, but I want to double check. In terms of doing it anywhere on the planet, can it be done virtually, some of this stuff?
Yeah, of course. Absolutely.
Wow.
There's a lot of the pandemic taught all of us that. But
Yeah.
yeah.
And I can imagine even if you open up the door to somebody express themselves, there's nobody here about, you and like the two of us here. Nobody's watching, nobody's judging, if it's a closed Zoom session for somebody to express themselves and just, get it all out. Wow.
Yes. Yes.
Interesting. Interesting stuff that you bring to the table. And therapy, there's all different types. This is a very different type and can uncover things that, even if somebody's having talk therapy, they may be closed. They're not giving everything up, but Now, when it comes to expressing yourself in music and dance and creativity, I think it's going to come out.
It's also fun,
And that
right?
too.
Even your example of the parachute, like
Yeah.
you probably enjoyed that on some point. That's why you remember it. We remember things that are fun.
Yeah.
I mean, we do.
And guess
So,
what? I'm going skydiving for the first time probably next week.
oh my gosh.
Not even kidding.
Good luck.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been on the bucket list. Somebody gave me a gift certificate for a birthday 2 years ago. I'm holding on to it. And my son just turned 18. So I'm like, legal. You want to go? He's like, yeah, okay. So we're going to do it. What the heck?
That's amazing.
Yeah, life's short.
Yeah.
I'll be expressing myself in the sky. Believe me. Yeah, in loud noises.
Yeah.
Denise, great talking with you. Thanks for being here today, and looking forward next time we get together.
All right. Thank you. Take care.
You too. We're coming right back.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, I mean, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
Mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house. And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned.
This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.